Shalom. I'm Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. The holiday of Sukkot, the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, begins tomorrow night. And Sukkot is a holiday that raises one from the depths of despair to the heights of happiness. In fact, Sukkot is referred to as Zaman Simchotenu, the holiday of our happiness. It's a time when the Jewish people leave the comfort of their homes to go outside and spend 7 days in a flimsy structure, exposed to the elements, covered with the roof of tree branches or bamboo or something that is a natural substance, not metal or stone. You have to be able to see the stars through the roof, as well as let the sun in. One of the ways of achieving happiness, which is so important in this day and age, there's a lot of people that are going around and are not really happy. So one of the ways of achieving happiness is to work toward the happiness of others. And this is demonstrated by a beautiful story that I love to tell on every Sukkot by Rav Shlomo Carlebach. And it illustrates how a person who is full of anger can be turned around into a happy person. And the story is told originally by Rav Aaron of Karlin, the Hasidic dynasty in the mid-1700s. There was a Karliner Hasid, and the Karliner Hasidim are very, very happy. And there was a small little town in Russia, Poland, and there was this poor man, very poor, but he was very, very happy. So every Shabbat he'd be singing Zemirot, Shabbos songs to the top of his lungs, and it was just beautiful life, even though he was poor. The person across the street from him was the wealthiest person in town. And all you heard from that house, not singing on Shabbos, was yelling. His wife was yelling at him, he was yelling at his wife, the kids were yelling at both of them, they're yelling at the kids. Total anger. And the rich man couldn't understand how this poor man could be so happy, and it upset him more and more. But the worst time came when Sukkot came, when it came time to build a sukkah. And the poor man goes outside and builds his little sukkah, and the rich man builds his sukkah, and he has to hear much louder the singing and the happiness of this person, and it just drove him into a fit of total anger. And he decided, that's it, I can't put up with this another year. So he said, I'm going to tell everybody in town who happens to be dependent on me for their livelihood not to give this person anything to help him build a sukkah next year, not to give him boards, anything that he needs. And next year came around, and this poor man, as he did every single year, went out to the community and was knocking on doors. And he goes up to Moshe. Moshe says, I'm sorry, I love you, but I can't have my family to feed, my wife and children. If I give you anything for the sukkah, if I give you any boards, the rich man will take away my livelihood. Goes to another person, same, he goes to everybody in town. It's the night before Sukkot, and he hasn't gotten a sukkah together yet. He has no material, and he's really despondent. And he takes a walk down the street of the small city, and a thought comes to him. You know, in Europe at that time, a poor person, when he died, the family could not afford to put up any kind of a monument except a small wooden plank, a little wooden plank on which was written Pei Nun, which means here is buried, below it the name of the person. And he decided the cemetery has hundreds of these things. There's not going to be 100 people, God forbid, that should die over Sukkot in this little town. Let me borrow these planks, I'll build a sukkah, and I'll return them after Sukkot. So he goes, sure enough, he borrows from the cemetery. Nobody even knows. He takes all these planks, builds himself a sukkah, and every one of the beams and the walls have Pei Nun written on it. Here is buried. Sukkot comes, and the rich man goes out into his sukkah, and all of a sudden he sees that there's a sukkah across the way with the poor man. And it gets even worse. Pretty soon the poor man starts singing. The rich man's carrying on as always, yelling at his children, at his wife, vice versa. Horrible anger. And the poor man seems the happiest man in the world. This is more than he can take. He gets so angry, the rich man. He goes stomping across the street, pounding on the sukkah door of the poor man, yelling at him, "Who gave you these boards to build the sukkah? I told everybody not to do it. Who did this?" And the poor man replies, "Please, come in. Thank you for visiting my sukkah. Come in, sit down, calm yourself, have a drink. But who made this sukkah? Who gave you this?" He said, "Let me tell you what happened. It was the night before Sukkot, one day before. I didn't have a sukkah. Nobody would give me any materials. They listened to you. And I was walking down the street and wondering, what am I going to do? And all of a sudden, guess who I met up with? I met up with the Malach HaMavos, the angel of death. And I said, "Hello, friend, what are you doing in this town?" He says, "I have a job I have to do. I have to bring somebody from this world." And he says, "Who is it?" And he says, "It was you." So I said to the angel of death, I said, "Don't waste your time. This person is already dead. He's dead to the world. He doesn't have a life at all. I'll save you the trouble. Don't bother yourself. Just go." And he says, "Thank you very much." And he said, "As a present to you for saving me this energy, I'm going to let you take these boards from the cemetery and use them to build a sukkah." And that's how I built the sukkah. As he's telling this story, every moment that he's telling this story, the rich man's face gets totally white. He almost passes out, hearing that he was almost about to die and that this saved him. And he said, "Tell me, you know that I'm an angry person. How can I get to be happy like you?" He says, "There's only one way. You have to go to the city of Karlin, go to the Rabbi of Karlin, the Karliner Rabbi, and study with him, and you'll find out how to be happy." And in fact, that's what he did. And he turned around completely, got rid of all of his anger, and became not only a happy individual, but became a great chassid of Karlin, a very pious person of this particular dynasty. And the moral of the story is that sometimes we really have to hit somebody over the head to make them see that where they're living, how they're living, is not all that they can achieve. That if they want to, they can achieve happiness. And having a sukkah for a Jew on the holiday of Sukkot is the epitome of happiness. And this poor person, he went from the equivalent of being homeless, because a Jew who doesn't have a sukkah on Sukkot is like a homeless person, because the real home for a Jew is in the sukkah. And that's where the joy comes from. And he was able to show through his joy how somebody else can have the joy too. And that's what we have to do. This holiday of Sukkot is a time of our happiness, let's make sure that not only are we happy, don't bring any anger into the sukkah, but make other people happy. Look out for other people. Thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. I wish everybody a Chag Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom. Have a happy holiday.